So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, given that you're all logged on from across the globe. Welcome and thank you for joining me, Dr. Rukmini Chaturvedi, in the Crafting Furniture in the Global South Contemporary Practices, Histories, and Future Symposium, convened in collaboration with the Design History Society. Before I start, I just want to say that this symposium is being recorded. We will send out permission forms before it is posted or shared with anyone or anywhere. In the event that you would not like to be a part of it, we will not put your presentations on. You all have seen the schedule for the day. We will go panel by panel with the questions and answers as indicated on that. May I please request everyone, of course, and you know that, to turn your mics off except for the presenter. All the presenters, we're asking for you to share your own screens. I will only jump in case there's a problem with your screen share. Time is of the essence, so please don't go over the 15 minutes. I will give you a heads up. Jenna, the DHS administrator, will be giving a 2-minute warning for each presentation. Now that I have those bits out of the way, let us talk about furniture and why we are here. One of the key propositions underpinning the symposium is that design history cannot be written solely through canonical designers, iconic objects, or national styles. Furniture occupies a curious position within design history. It sits somewhere between architecture and object, between the domestic and the public, between craft and industry. And yet, despite this centrality, furniture, particularly from South and Southeast Asia and the wider global South, has often remained marginal to dominant design historical narratives. This symposium, I believe, begins from that gap. Finally, this is designed as a space for dialogue. The format is intentionally structured to encourage conversation across disciplines and perspectives between historians, designers, craftspeople, and curators. So I'd encourage you to think of today not as a series of presentations, but as an ongoing discussion, one in which connections, tensions, and even disagreements are not only welcome, but necessary. Thank you again for being here. I look forward to all the conversations that are going to emerge. So shall we start now? So this is now the third panel about craft, labor, and making. So our first speaker is Ufa Kinam, who's talking about remaking authorship in the bazaar, about craft, labor, copying, and furniture design in urban Pakistan.
Exactly.
Over to you, Ufa.
Thank you very much. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I am Ufa Kinam, and I'm a senior scientist and lecturer at Department of Design Theory and History at Angewandte Kunst, Vienna, Austria. So today I want to take you to somewhere that object history rarely goes, into the cramped, noisy, sawdust-filled workshop of Pakistan's urban bazaars. The paper this presentation draws on argues that these spaces are not marginal to contemporary design. They are, in fact, among its most generative sites. The title signals two things at once: a literal remaking of furniture objects and a conceptual remaking of how we think about authorship, creativity, and design knowledge itself. So in the next 15 minutes, I will move through these 6 interconnected sections. My presentation would be more on the philosophical side of craft, labor, furniture, and authenticity. So please bear with me. Okay, so let me paint a picture. Imagine a workshop no larger than a single garage tucked behind a busy bazaar street in Lahore or Karachi. Timber is stacked against every wall, a lathe is running, 2 apprentices are sanding a frame that arrived that morning as a broken colonial era chair and will leave this evening as something new. This is the site, and for too long, design historians have walked straight past it. The research is grounded in long-term ethnographic fieldwork during and after my PhD work in Lahore, observing, interviewing, and working alongside Bazaar and its people. What emerged was a picture of extraordinary design intelligence, decisions made in seconds about proportions, material substitution, surface treatment, and form, decisions that any trained designers would recognize as design thinking, even if the actor themselves would never use that word. Why does this matter for us as design historians? Because our discipline has overwhelming centered the European or North American studio, the named designer, and the author objects. In doing so, we have systematically misread an enormous amount of creative making as either mere craft, presumed traditional, pre-modern, or as derivative copying, presumed uncreative, imitative. Both framings are wrong. This research sets out to show why. Okay, so yeah. The analysis draws on three converging bodies of work, and I want to flag them quickly because they do specific work in the argument. First, decolonial design history. Scholars like Tony Fry and Guy Julier have called for a fundamental decentering of Western design canons. Mahmoud Mamdani is, although not a design historian, his work shows how colonial governors produce categories of legitimate and illegitimate and classification of cultural production that continue to structure what we see as proper design now. Second is design anthropology. Tim Ingold's concept of making as wayfaring is foundational. The idea that knowledge doesn't precede action but emerges through it, through material engagement. This is exactly what happens in the bazaar workshops. Design decisions are not planned in advance. They unfold in the encounter with wood, with the client's wishes, with a broken joint. Third is theories of copying and authorship. For that, so for that, Walter Benjamin famously argued that mechanical reproduction transforms rather than simply duplicate an original. Together, these help us refuse the reflex that copies are lesser objects or negotiated authenticities. So the diagram on this slide traces the long chain of stylistic influence that feeds into these workshops. It's a history most design historians know only from one end. British colonial furniture, institutional pieces for government buildings, officers, bungalows, club interior circulated through British India and left deep formal imprints, the straight back chair, the writing bureau, the dining sideboard, and etc. After partition in 1947, these forms became entangled with aspirational postcolonial modernity. To own Western-style furniture was to signal sophistication, education, and upward mobility. Now, fast forward, today's customers arrive with images on their phone, screenshots from IKEA catalogs or Instagram feeds or social media. They show the ustads, I want this, but in teak, and I need an extra shelf, and my budget is half what this cost. So there is a lot of spontaneous negotiation going on in the workshops with clients and masters. What happens next is the key analytical moment. The craft person does not copy, they translate that negotiation with that specific object and design. The form is adjusted to local timber width, the proportion shifts, ornament from one tradition graphs onto silhouette from another. Function migrates. What emerges is neither original nor any kind of copy. It is a hybrid object carrying multiple genealogies. So in this regard, if we consider Benjamin's insight is useful precisely here because when you say that reproduction always changes what it reproduces, so it is the process that transforms the object into a newer being. The bazaar is not lagging behind design culture, it is producing a distinct variant of it. Okay, so labor scaled and shared authorship. So one of the most important interventions in this paper is on authorship, and it comes from paying close attention to whom actually does what in the workshop. On the left, you can simply see a hierarchy, the Ustad, Karigar, and the Shagird. But hierarchy doesn't tell the full story. Authorship in these workshops is generally distributed. The Ustads, the masters, may make the initial formal decision, the overall shape, the key proportions, but the Karigar makes dozens of micro decisions during fabrication, how to respond to a knot in the wood, how to adjust a joint that isn't quite holding, and etc. And the Shagit is not merely watching. They are absorbing through repetition and proximity a form of tactic knowledge that can never be fully articulated in words. So, authorship here is also strategically obscured. When a workshop sells a reclad piece as new, they are not simply lying, or they're not simply lying. They are navigating a market logic in which the appearance of newness commands a premium. Okay, so the next slide is concealment and authenticity. So recladding is the practice at the heart of the paper's most ethically complex argument. A chair arrives at the workshop. It might be 20, 30, 40 years old, structurally sound, but visually tired. The craft people strip it to its frame, recover it in new foam, new fabric, or new veneer, repaint it, and it leaves looking brand new. It is sold as new. The customer pays a new furniture price. Is this deception? The research work resists that easy judgment. For that, we can consider Baudrillard here. If the surface becomes the object, if what is being purchased is the experience of newness, of freshness, of possession, then the original frame is not the locus of value. The surface is, and the surface has been genuinely, skillfully remade. Yeah. And another important consideration would be the Gracia Cancelini here, as she says that hybrid modernities are the norm, not the exception across the global south. What looks like deception from a Western design history standpoint is, from another angle, a perfectly rational response to an asymmetric cultural economy. Okay, so one more piece of context before the argument lands, that these workshops are operating under serious economic pressure. On one side, the global flat pack market has reached South Asia. Retailers offering cheap, modern-looking important furniture have entered Pakistani cities, and their presence has reshaped what middle-class customers expect design to look like and what they expect to pay for it. On another side, domestic factories in Lahore and Karachi produce standardized furniture at scale. The workshop cannot compete on price for a plain piece. And the smartphone has changed the conversation at the counters and in the workshops as well. Customers now arrive with images from websites and social media, and they want that, but cheaper, but different, and now. So the workshop response have been to lean into what factories cannot offer: genuine customization, speed, material flexibility, and a kind of skill, theatricality. The craft person demonstrating mastery in front of the customer as part of the sale process. So this is design as performance as well as production. I have been greatly intrigued by the theatricality of the furniture makers in bazaars of Lahore, especially. So, yeah. So here I want to reframe the contemporary furniture discourse. And this slide makes the core conceptual move explicit, and I want to walk through it carefully because each pairing matters. So peripheral imitators versus active producers of design knowledge. This is the central reframing. The bazaar workers is not at the edge of design culture, receiving and degrading what the center or mainstream produces. They are generating design knowledge in their own right through their own situated practice. Second is copying as failure versus copying as critical translation. Translation is an active skill, consequential act. It involves judgment about what to preserve, what to adapt, what to discard. That is exactly what these craft people do. So next is Design knowledge flows from west to west. Yeah. This is the assumption embedded in most global design history, and it is empirically wrong. Knowledge flows in multiple directions through multiple objects, through people who have worked in different countries, through digital platforms, through the back and forth of customer negotiation as well. So the next is authenticity resides in the original versus authenticity is ideologically constructed. There is no neutral ground from which to judge authenticity. Every such judgment is made from within a culture or an economic position. And finally, bazaar workshops are pre-modern survivals versus hyper-modern creative ecologies. So these workshops are not remnants. They are fully contemporary, fully embedded in global material flows, fully responsive to digital culture. To call them pre-modern is to refuse to see them clearly. So this slide is here for your reference. And yeah, so I want to close with the paper's central claim, which is on the slide here, that bazaar furniture makers should be recognized not as peripheral imitators, but as active producers of design knowledge, and their work demands reframing of contemporary furniture discourse. This is not a sentimental argument about craft preservation or vernacular design or traditional design and craft system. It is a structural argument about what design history has missed and what it needs to correct. We need to provincialize a lot of domains in design history itself. And yeah, these workshops are not past. They're one of design's present. They are unruly. They are adaptive, and they are ethically complex, and they are generative sites of contemporary design. So, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Ufak. Our next speakers are Mohammad Rahman and Bishwajit Goswami, talking about post-independence furniture cultures in Bangladesh.
Thank you, Rukmini. Can you see our slide?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So good day, everyone, wherever you're joining from. Through this visual storytelling, this inquiry revealed how furniture culture in Bangladesh emerged not from industrial system or formal production in the design education, but through collaboration, craft, knowledge, improvisation, and relationships between people, material, and place. Our topic of the conversation is objects in conversation, and we'll go through it together. Today, I'm Muhammad Nafisur Rahman, trained as an architect and design researcher, joined by my colleague from Bangladesh, Bishwajit Goswami, artist, educator, curator, and we want to briefly share our journey of interdisciplinary curatorial collaboration across 8,000 miles between Cincinnati and Dhaka. Specifically, we'll discuss our research through curation, Sthiti, Objects in Conversation, an exhibition at Brihatta Art Foundation in Dhaka that brought together the last 5 decades of post-independence furniture and object design in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, its design in identity is inseparable from its artistic and architectural histories. Trailblazers like architect Mazharul Islam redefined modernism through climate openness, material economy, and resistance, challenging the Western design dogma. Bangladesh had formal fine arts education since 1948 and architecture since 1961, but no dedicated school for furniture or product design yet. But it has a rich furniture culture emerged in this context. Climate intelligence became a cultural opportunity, shaded transitional spaces transform comfort into community, and a profound conversation with nature. While modernity is often framed through industrial progress in Western discourse, Dhaka's version remained deeply rooted in the embodied knowledge of skilled traditional artisans. Architect Islam carefully orchestrated wood, brick, and perforated jali screens into layered and porous thresholds by mediating light, ventilation, privacy, and movement, balancing simple modern form with nature. The fluted textures on terracotta bricks in particular reintroduce a tactile handmade quality, making the act of construction visible and restoring a tectonic sensitivity often lost in industrial modernism. Now, our exhibition also centers on Mazharul Islam's designed dormitory chair from 1971, making the act of construction more visible and restoring where precise wood joinery and economy reveals a deeply humanist approach to climate-responsive design with reference and relevance far beyond architecture. Now, the question becomes, where does this knowledge come from? Who teaches this sensitivity? Who are the layers, and how are the layers of design transmitted? Our curatorial research also argues that highly skilled artisan communities have functioned as alternative institutions of learning for generations. Vishwajit, muted, I guess.
Hi everyone, I'm from Washington DC right now. Thank you everyone here. So our exhibition took place at Brihat Art Foundation in Hazaribagh, Dhaka in Bangladesh, and located along the riverbanks of a former leather tannery district in the capital. It is one of the most polluted and dense area of the older Dhaka in the city. Hazaribagh, once a tannery district that quite literally polluted the city, returns metaphorically as a thousand garden, a site to rediscover and reconsider our ways of living with art and culture. The nostalgia of industrial leather manufacturing, where the air, heavy with a persistent stench, bears witness to decades of toxic pollution and ecological decline, and used to be a bleak urban reality. Brihatta breathed new life into an abandoned warehouse and becomes one of poetic transformative answer to the chaotic city, though rigorous 4-month upcycling process with artisan community by co-founder and artist Vishwajit Goswami 2021 during the pandemic. Prior to the exhibitions, Brihatta curated the premises for a dialogue through a series of critical questions for the public. This transformation resists spectacle and instead embraced care, reworking an abandoned tannery into a living space. Textures and thresholds where contemplation becomes a method to open dialogue, and dialogue becomes the ground for equity, trust, and belonging. Brihatto believes in preparation and traditional tools, knowledge that embedded in conversation, making tradition and practices, intuition and collaborative relationship between designers and craftsmen people. The open space connects artists, craftsmen people, architects, students, researchers, and communities. It resists hierarchy among people. Its work centers around alternative learning with slow scholarship and unlearning with community engagement. This became the ideal context for the exhibition because of the foundation itself already embodied the collaborative ethos in its inception, for all with all, a space where every voice can enter the conversation.
Thiti, it means existence and calmness in Bengali. The exhibition is an encounter. It brought around 33 objects by 17 architects and designers across roughly 5 decades of post-independence Bangladesh. But this was never intended to be a series of isolated furniture. We wanted objects to speak to each other, to enter into a conversation with curiosity. Walking barefoot through the space, one encounters material to touch, feeling the care, labor, and weeks of polishing by female artisans that we showed before, embedded in every surface. To create curious conversation across totally focused and engaged critics and fans, encountered through the furniture. Ideologies through continuous discourses. Community disseminations, and joyful narrative of design and drawing as disseminations. And lastly, material and altered perspective in the exhibition. Primitive mirror forms subtly disrupt the visitor's conventional gaze, showing perception and redirecting attention towards detail, reflection, and the act of seeing itself. Every detail demanded collective attention every time. Curation unfolded through hours of conversation, care, and slow scholarship, as Bishwajit was stating before. The curation asked why design identity takes shape when making it collective, resourceful, and inherited. The exhibition was organized around 4 thematic inquiries: material and climate, reduction and resourcefulness, heritage and modernity, and collective identity. These themes emerge rapidly and repeatedly through the objects itself. Many of the works reflect humility rather than spectacle, which is very vital in our country. Bangladeshi design often operates through quiet intelligence rather than excessive formalism. For instance, the drafting table reflects architect Islam's ethos of precision and economy within the minimalism, where custom wooden guides, hidden mechanism, and a slender yet grounded frame reveal a disciplined, human-centered approach of making. The hand is there, visible. An oval bench by architect Bashirul Haq exposes carpentry logic, where curvature and joinery articulate the expert hand of the maker. The suspended side table from the ceiling transforms reclaimed materials through skilled craftsmanship, foregrounding reuse, surface treatment, and adaptive making. Similarly, the low stool crafted from the timber waste in the house reflected vernacular practices of resourcefulness and construction reuse. The exhibition design itself became the form of research, a form of inquiry. We intentionally avoided hyper-commercial display strategies. Instead, objects are positioned to entice curiosity. A bench by Goswami preserves traces of tannery wood, embedded past and deep nostalgia into form. Materials are never neutral here. Wood, cane, metal, clay, touch, they can all become the baggage of memory, labor, climate, and economy. Here, innovation is collective, and collaboration itself becomes the decolonizing practice. A bamboo bench emerged from conversation between architect Marina Tabassum and Alamgir, the local carpenter, where design intent and hands-on craft meet through market reuse. Resonating with Escobar's Pluriverse, the project argues for an alternative design epistemology where interdisciplinariness, interdependency, craft knowledge, and material stewardness are central. In Bangladesh, making with hands is not simply fabrication. In Global South, this is methodology in which working with scarcity, reducing waste, and reimagining material alternates and alternatives become acts of design excellence. Also, the circulation and pauses encounters critical dialogue. Visitors move slowly through the space, unfinished texture remained visible. We wanted audience to sense labor, touch, temporality, and the value of collaboration.
Production itself becomes relation while the objects reveal a respect for resources. The visual assemblage of materials, existence of labor and past in the background, and the making process depends on continuous adaptation between designer and artisan. Ultimately, the exhibition made us more curious about our own design identity, how it shaped not through singular authorship, but through design partnership, shared labor, and acts of making together. It suggests that Bangladeshi design emerged through a triangulation of people, the potential of materials and place, through relationships rather than isolation. In that sense, the exhibition embodies a radical equity of creative practice, reminding us that every architect can be an artist and every artist in turn can become an architect. The display itself become argument, not perfection, but process, not isolated object, but interconnected practices. To conclude, Object in Conversation was never simply an exhibition about furniture. It was an attempt to understand how objects carry memory, labor, negotiation, and cultural identity. Perhaps it does not offer definitive answers, but instead leaves us with more urgent questions, opening the next conversation around the design, craft, and the culture of making. Welcome to Bangladesh. Let's collaboration with Brihatto. And I think this is just a beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both. That was fascinating to hear that about furniture from Bangladesh. Our next speakers are Beatrice Bianco and Maria Rita Ferreira. They are talking about recalibrating design history in a Saudi craft ecosystem. Over to you, Beatrice. Are you there?
Yes, hello everyone.
Hello. Yes, and I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, Marinella today is not joining us because she's actually flying to Saudi Arabia. So it's just going to be me. So I am here today to talk about an experience that we had by the end of the 2025. And this paper presents Crafting Furniture Histories, a teaching and a research project developed by me and Professor Ferrara within Politecnico di Milano in Saudi Arabia. This, as I said, happened between September and December 2025. And it examines how furniture history changes when read through craft-based practices rather than industrial design frameworks. So the context is Saudi Arabia within the Vision 2030, where craft is increasingly treated not only as heritage to be preserved, but as a productive cultural infrastructure, operating through workshop systems, local materials, and institutional support. Within this framework, our class of the course became a site of negotiation and reformulation of what is actually design history. So the problem is the inherited categories. So the starting point is historiographical. As Chetil Fallen stated, design history is constructed through specific theoretical frameworks and categories. Furniture history has been structured around categories such as authorship, style, innovation, and progress. These are not neutral descriptors, but historically produced tools. These are categories, and categories shape infrastructures. So when applied to craft-based practices, their explanatory capacity weakens. The course, as I was saying, is called Critical Histories of Furniture Design, and it engages with canonical categories of furniture history. It is driven by analyzing objects within their material and production context, rather than only through canonical frameworks. This shift makes visible where categories such as authorship, innovation, and progress stop fully describing what is happening. So their limits are progressively exposed. And this positioning allows the classroom to function not only as teaching, but as a site of methodological testing. So here is one of our class sessions with our students, and actually a special guest from Italian radical design tradition, Franco Drito by Studio 65, and he was actually explaining, for instance, the radical design tradition in the 60s and the 70s in Italy to our students in Riyadh. But let's come back to what we were talking about. So the research question is, what happens to furniture historiography when craft-based practices become the primary lens? We analyze objects through their materials, their making, and the knowledge embedded in them. Canonical categories are not applied externally, but engaged through reading, which makes their limit visible in practice. The classroom, as said again, functions as the site where this process is structured and tested. So, furniture history traditionally assumes, at least furniture Western history, traditionally assumes singular authorship, stylistic rupture, linear progress. However, these categories are historically contingent and tied to specific Western narratives, even not the whole. Okay, so when applied to craft systems, they begin to lose coherence. So let's see some few case studies. So this first case study is not presented as a proper Saudi piece of furniture, but as a reference from the wider Islamic craft tradition connected to the historical formation of Islamic North Africa. This is the minbar. I don't know if someone of you will for sure know this. This is the minbar from the Kutubia Mosque in Morocco. And it's useful here because it sits at the edge of what furniture history can describe. It has structure, function, ornament, and relation to the body, but it's not simply a piece of furniture. Its meaning comes from collective making, technical complexity, ritual use, patronage, and political authority. So it challenges categories such as individual authorship, style, and objecthood. I use it as a critical opening. Before moving to the Saudi context, it helps show how craft objects can operate as assemblies of makers, materials, institutions, and uses. Following Bruno Latour, who is not an historian but is a sociologist, objects can be understood as assemblies of multiple actors, human and non-human, rather than the result of a single designer. So this destabilizes the category of the designer and the idea of style as purely formal attribute. Then, with Saudi weaving, this questioning moves directly into the Saudi craft ecosystem. In Saudi weaving, what we encounter is not a discrete furniture object, but a material system that structures seating and spatial organization. It was this weaving tradition was in the past used for Bedouin tents, and then within this the contemporary days, this craft tradition was included within contemporary envisions. So Saudi textiles define surfaces, enclosures, and relations between bodies and spaces. In contemporary applications, these textiles are adapted to interior and furniture contexts without losing their logic of production. What this shows is that what we might call furniture does not exist as an isolated object, but emerges from a system of materials, practices, and uses. So, what emerges from this? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So, what emerges? Yeah, sorry, because I heard the.
Yes, I did too. Someone else's audio came on, it seems.
Okay.
Now we can hear you. Carry on. Thank you.
Okay, so I was saying that what emerges from these cases is not the disappearance of these categories. Okay, so we don't want to erase the entire frame here, but their recalibration. So authorship is not longer located in a single designer, but distributed across makers, materials, and processes. Innovation does not appear as a rupture, but a transformation through continuity and adaptation. Progress is no longer linear, but takes multiple context-specific trajectories. And the object itself is no longer read as an isolated entity, but as a material and production system. What I always, the first thing that I said to my students in Riyadh was a furniture piece is first of all a tool of information. So objects are systems of information. They give you information. So this shift results directly from analyzing objects within their material and production context. As the course unfolds, this category of furniture so then becomes less stable. When objects are analyzed through their material and production context, they do not simply present themselves as defined forms, but as configurations shaped by materials, practices, relations, historical moment, also political context, and so on and so forth. So what counts as furniture in this sense depends on the condition in which it is produced and understood. To conclude, when objects are analyzed within the conditions that shape their productions, the frameworks we use to interpret them begin to show their partial and situated character. This calls for a recalibration of furniture historiography, first of all in the Western countries, and then maybe also elsewhere. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed and I made myself clear enough to be understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. Our next speaker is David Stairs, who's talking about the Ugandan vernacular. I think I saw you, David. You're there.
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Yes.
waiting to share.
Thank you.
Desktop.
Would you like me to share for you?
Yes, I'm having difficulty opening the sharing. I'm apologizing.
Let me see. I have your.
Do you have that
Vernacular Furnishings of East Africa.
document that I sent you?
I have the one called Vernacular Furnishings of East Africa.
Correct.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Just one moment. Can everybody see this?
Okay.
Can you see it, David? Yeah.
I can see it. Yes. My
Yes,
apologies.
we can
Yeah.
see.
Okay.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
So,
Let me know when you want me to go forward in the slides.
yeah, go right ahead. Just click through. So Africa has 54 sovereign nations, and I lived and worked in Uganda in East Africa for 3 years. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was so Uganda's a landlocked nation, surrounded by 6 countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, the DRC, and South Sudan. It's also the source of the Nile. And it has 52 million souls at a very young age. Next slide. Some of the things from surrounding countries. This is a recycled crown cap carrier from Kenya. Next. Weaving from Tanzania, which is popular with the Maasai. Next. A Banyankali milk bottle from Rwanda, made of carved wood. Again. A Congolese mask. Again. And a coiled woven food cover from Sudan. Okay, so Uganda straddles the equator. My son is standing here with a foot in each hemisphere. And its climate ranges from tropical in the south to Sahel in the north. And it's bound on the east by the Mountains of the Moon, or the Virungas, which feed Lake Nyanza, and Mount Elgon in the east. Okay. Just to return to the map again. So this is a friend of mine sitting under Bujagali Falls of the Nile, which is now underwater because they're developing so much hydro on the Nile, much of it to export to Kenya. This is now underwater. Okay. In Uganda, you can find furniture along the roadside. Everything from bedsteads, next, to bookcases and desks, to practicalities for the afterlife. Next. This wonderful coffin sign was outside opposite the Malago Hospital, where Ebola cases are brought in Uganda, and it also factored in the film The Last King of Scotland. It was only up for a couple of weeks, but it was a wonderful sign. Next. These overstuffed armchairs are displayed along the roadside, and they are rushed into adjacent sheds whenever there is a torrential downpour, which is frequent. Okay. Here, this pickup truck is delivering several frames for chairs and couches. Okay. And the couch frames are not sprung with metal springs, but with rubber strips that are cut from recycled tire treads. Next. These are readily available on the roadside, and Ugandans use them for all kinds of things, including sandals. Next. And here, a truck bed liner of woven tire tread strips. Okay, again, that's good. Along the roadside, you can find gentlemen like this who are making cushions for vehicles and for furniture. Next. Some of the coverings that they use could be bark cloth, which is made from hammered ficus tree bark. These are the sheds in Natete that sell bark cloth in different grades, some fit for a king, some for an average person. There's a hat here that's made of it, and I also had colleagues who used it instead of canvas to paint on. Okay. These chairs imitate Eames chairs in that they're molded plywood attached to a steel frame. They don't have Eames's innovation of a rubber donut separating the materials, which protects them from breakage. Okay. Other types of chairs. This one is made from local rattan material. Next. And here, a sling chair. Sling chairs, of course, are common the world over. This one is made from woven leather. Next. In more tribal aspect, this is a headrest stool from Karamoja in the far northeast of Uganda, in a bordering area where the Karamojong and the Turkana from Kenya raid one another's cattle back and forth across the border. Next. This I consider the Ugandan national seat. It's called an akatebe, which means basket stool, and it's made from coiled rattan. You can find people sitting on them throughout the country. They come in many different sizes. Next slide. Here, this gentleman is planing legs for them. Okay. And here, this market lady is sitting on one as she weaves strips to pass the time. And these strips will be made into the next slide. Mats that are always put down on the ground before anyone sits. There's an obsession with avoiding biting insects. Metal, of course, can be considered part of furnishing too. And the blacksmiths who work in the markets make these footlockers because they're very popular with boarding school students and university students because they're rat-proof. Next. You can see that they are decorated with stencils that are spray painted on them. Okay. And these are some of the stencils I found in the marketplace. Next. Cooking we don't think of as furnishings, but they are appliances, and most people in Africa are cooking daily over charcoal. Next. This is just a tire wheel that's used to roast corn or maize, which is a snack food in the market. Okay. And these are some more charcoal stoves. These are bad ones, unlike the ones that are made in Kenya that are lined with ceramic that burn more efficiently, the Jiko stove. Next. This is a sign that's advertising such ceramic lined stoves as fuel efficient and money saving. Okay. These images come from a book that I published last October called Okawangala, which means long-liveness in Lugandan, the language of the Buganda people. Okay. Thanks to Dr. Chaturvedi and the Design History Society for allowing me to make this presentation.
Thank you for that, David. Thank you very much. The next person on our panel today is Chandana Reddy, who is talking about the furniture makers of Tamil Nadu, a state in South India. Chandana, are you there?
Hi. Yes,
Oh.
I'm here.
Okay.
Happy to be here. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a minute.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great. Sorry. Okay. So, is it showing as full screen? Are you able to see it clearly, the text and the pictures?
We can see the text, yes, and the picture.
Okay. Great.
I mean, it's not totally
So-
full screen, though, not for me at least. No, can everybody else see it clearly? I can read on it clearly and I can see the
Yes.
I can read.
We can see it.
No problem.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So I have been researching the work of traditional architects and craftsmen in Tamil Nadu. I live in Chennai and I've worked in Chennai as an architect and an educator, and also in Auroville in Pondicherry. So I've been over the past 5 years working with my mentor and a group of architects who have been interested in researching traditional knowledge systems and bringing it out for public discourse and bringing it into curriculums, because very little about this is documented and talked about as it needs to be. So to introduce their work and the historical background, the touchers, as they are called, traditional carpenters of Tamil Nadu, they belong to a community of skilled artisans known as the Kamalar or Vishwakarma community. The work methodology, measuring techniques, habits, ethics, and material handling of the community are similar across the entire country. So we have marked over here a couple of states. The Vishwakarma community are spread across the different states, and they were known by different names. So they were called, in the north, they were called Lohars, Tarkans. In the west, they were called Mohapatras, Sutars. Down south, they were called Stapatis, Kolars, Kamalars. And they were also called Sompuras in Gujarat and other places in the west. So they work closely with the traditional architects, also called the Stapatis. So they lived and traveled together from one site to the other and worked on site primarily. But today we see that a lot of them have workshops and they do their pieces and work on these workshops and then install them on sites. So they have within the community a group of blacksmiths, stone sculptors, even goldsmiths, as well as traditional carpenters working alongside the Stapatis. And these are all the different components that go into constructing temples, public buildings, residences. They make furniture and even maritime vessels. Their craft is deeply embedded in the region's social and cultural fabric, and their skills are transferred intergenerationally through rigorous hands-on training, which usually starts at a very young age of 10, 12, when they assist the senior craftspeople. Toucher in Tamil translates to the one who stitches. He's considered highly skilled in stitching different components of a material together seamlessly. There are traditional texts such as the Manasara and the Maya Matha, compiled in the 6th and 11th centuries AD, that contain details on furniture traditionally produced by the Vishwakarmas. The furniture ranged from culturally significant pieces such as the unjal or swing and the petty or storage chest to pieces for daily use such as cots and almiras. They designed furniture for residences of royal family, priests, merchants, and farmers. And their work can be traced back to the Sangam period, which is 300 BCE to 300 CE, and an even earlier period called the Vedic period, 1500 BCE to 500 BCE. So the types of wood that they use, primarily what is seen today in their workshops, they often use teak. Teak is considered a very reliable wood. It's often called the king of woods. It's favored for its strength, natural waterproofing, and resistance to termites. It's the most common choice for premium furniture like beds, swings, and cabinets. There's also Indian rosewood that's primarily found in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Odisha. It's prized for its hardness, grain patterns, making it ideal for sturdy furniture, and even musical instruments. There's also Vaigai, specifically used for sacred hand-carved masterpieces and wooden statues by artists in Tamampatti, who also follow the Vishwakarma lineage. There is jackwood, which is a hardwood indigenous to the region, valued for its workability and durability. There is also neem, which is occasionally used for its medicinal and insect repellent properties. And there is sandalwood that's reserved for sacred spaces, puja mandirs or altars, and intricate decorative carvings due to its what they feel its absorptive qualities. So we'll go into that later. I will show you an example of the puja altars. So the process of getting the wood starts from the first step, which is harvesting the wood. And the Mayamatham texts details a precise protocol for selecting and harvesting wood for construction and furniture. So the first being selection of the site and the tree. So there are new terms that I know would be new to a lot of people, but hopefully the translations make it simpler. So the takshaka, or the woodcutter, and the vardaki, carpenter. Vardaki is also the thatcher. They first identify a tree in an auspicious location. Auspicious location meaning a location that is in a healthy environment, not close to cemeteries, near temples, or near to places where there's ample water and resources like sun that's reaching the trees. And also they say to avoid trees that are struck by lightning. Then they do a vriksha puja, which is an offering to the tree. When they cut it, they're very mindful that they're in that particular location disrupting an ecosystem. So they offer water, flowers, and incense as a gratitude for the tree. And they believe that it appeases the vriksha devatas residing within. And there is so a deep sensitivity to the environment that they are working with. The felling ritual, the tree must be cut in a specific direction. These are not strict formulas, but usually aligning to the rising sun, doing it in early morning was supposed to be a good thing. And the sound and the way the tree fell were also observed as omens for the furniture's future quality. They're just being very sensitive to how the tree responds and being mindful of the way they treat it. Following the cut, the artisan often plants new saplings to maintain the ecological and spiritual balance. We observed that the craftsmen, over years of practice, become one with their craft and develop an ease and intimacy working with the materials and nature around them. So connection with nature and its rhythms, I feel, is the essence of sustainability. Traditional texts and cultural practices indicate that the communities in Tamil Nadu often held a deep symbiotic relationship with the forest. Instead of indiscriminate cutting, traditional practices such as selective harvesting, accompanied by replanting and allowing space for regeneration, ensured the forest ecosystem maintained its balance. So a lot of the forests were collectively held land that were also taken care by the local panchayats. And moving on to Vriksha Shastra. So this is a text that has to do with the science of plant life. It's widely used for agriculture, but it's also the fundamental for Vishwakarma craftsmen. And there's a very interesting classification of materials that they use. They classify trees into masculine, feminine, and neutral properties. They also do this with stone. It's based on the density, the grain of the wood, and where they can be used for. and they essentially tapping into the essence of the material here. And ancient texts such as Manushalaya Chandrika, they also classify wood into 4 categories depending on their the density again. So Antasara is a tree with a hardwood core like jackfruit trees. Bahisara is a tree with a hardwood outside, like palm and coconut. Sarvasara is a tree with the hardwood throughout, like teak and sal. Nisara are trees with no hardwood, just softwood. So the first 3 categories are used for construction as well as furniture, while the 4th is used for making idols. So the health and vitality of the tree is very important. They observe the leaves, the bark, also the sap that comes out of it when you cut it, and they only want to use wood that is disease-free and that can be used, that can be created into beautiful furniture and into construction structural elements that can last and that can be durable. So seasoning of the wood has different ways, different methods. Water soaking, as we all know, is important for sap removal. There's also air drying, which removes the moisture, stabilizes the wood structure. They also did surface charring, which is burning the wood, especially the ends of the wooden pole, to prevent termites from entering through. And they also did in making chariots, which were wooden structures in temples. They also exposed the wood to heat to allow bending and to work with it, to increase the workability. There were natural finishes. Seasoned wood was finished with herbal oils like neem or linseed, and waxes like beeswax to nourish the grain and provide a protective skin against humidity. So that's the process of working with the material in itself. And they did have also principles of design that they worked with as carpenters. So they were not merely looking at creating structures or items that were utilitarian, but they also had their own sense of aesthetics. So what are the 3 principles of design? This is specified in Mahabharata, which is, again, a very important story that is passed on from generation to generation in India. There is a portion in Mahabharata that talks about, introduces Maya, who was the architect, the divine architect, and he talks about basically 3 principles that govern architecture, and this can be applied to sculptures and furniture. And when we spoke to the traditional crafts people, they were working according to these principles. So the first is Bogadhyam, which is utility. Then there's Sukadarshanam, which is aesthetics. And then third is Ramyam, which is the joyousness that a certain piece of art or a piece of furniture or a building, a space that's created by architecture creates within the person using it. And this is also how the design process is evolved. So first, to ensure that the utility of the product is taken care of, then introducing aesthetics to refine it, and also further imbuing it with working with hand skills and connecting with the object. And as we know, a lot of the traditional craftsmen work with integrating the intangible cultural heritage of a place into their products. So ease of use, harmony in proportion, and joy of handling any furniture is equally essential. So taking you through some of the pieces that they have developed and they used to be involved with. So in agricultural homes, they used to make agricultural tools, charpoys, which are cots, and also daily use items. Here they're made of cane. They're sieves that were used for sieving rice husk. And you can see in the agricultural equipment, they were plows that were used to plow the field. And these images are basically from homes that were from the 19th century and that were relocated from various parts of Tamil Nadu and brought to a museum, a heritage museum in Chennai. And these houses would have been, they were already in a dilapidated condition, so they were restored and they were put into the museum so others could gain from understanding the way they were constructed and the materials and the furniture that they had. So unjal is a swing that was there in most houses. You will see them in agricultural homes, in merchant houses, even in palatial residences. And it was part of the living room. And even in events like weddings, it was said that a big part of the wedding process was done in Tamil Nadu when the bride and the bridegroom sat on the unjal and exchanged vows to each other. And here, next to the unjal, is the cradles for children, very intricately carved. And there were specific dimensions that were also given in the text that were developed over years of trial and error, perhaps, and also to understand the proportions of the users. So there was furniture for children, there was furniture for younger adults, and there was furniture for adults. So there were different measurements given according to the different age groups of in each household. So you have the petti, which is a storage chest, and the different variations of it. This was how they used to store their clothes, their any everyday use items. And the more intricate the petti is, it's also based on how well off the family is. So you see the merchant's house has a slightly more intricate, ornate design, while the petti in the agricultural house is more utilitarian. You can see when it's open, it has mirrors and it's very beautifully designed. It has several compartments. Next to the petti is also, if you see in the larger image, next to the storage chest, there is a walker for a child. So it was also made of wood. I was also told the type of wood that was used for playthings. Even the toys made for children were made of wood. They were made of wood that was safe for the children, and not there wasn't too much. Today there is a lot of chemicals used to polish the wood. They didn't have that then, and it was a conscious choice for them to use certain types of wood for use for children. You have entrance doors, which are very intricate. Agricultural homes also had very intricate doors. Merchants' homes also had, but a little bit more carvings in it. So the one that you see here is made of teak. Both the doors are made of teak. Again, the verandas, this is how the Thatchers also worked with their first step of working with architecture is to introduce these structural elements like columns and windows, doors, and rafters, and then the movable furniture. So this is a Chettiar house. They were traders. They became very successful as traders in the 1860s to 1930s. And their roots go back, way back to the 10th century. And they were very successful during the British colonial period. So their homes had very intricate designs, and you can see there's a combination of stone and wood in the pillars to the right. Looking at their homes a little further.
2 minutes, Chandana.
Yeah, thank you. So you've got the almiras, the writing desks, and mats to sit down, very intricately designed. There's a combination of putting ceramic tiles in the almiras and the mirrors seen in Chettiar homes. And here are the puja altars. So in a Brahmin house, the Brahmin house meaning the priest's house, you have simple altars. They are they put into the wall like a niche, and you see Tanjore paintings here being put into it. The idea is for the occupants of a home to touch base with the altar during the morning and during the evening, which are important thresholds in the day. And there is a larger puja altar in a palatial residence. So this is a few pictures from the Mahabalipuram workshop. They were showing us how they worked with joinery. So this is if you look down, there is a mortise and tenon joint of how the upper part of the mandapa is fixed onto the lower base. So they're essentially two different parts, and they spend many months working on each piece. And so they have various chisels of different sizes that they work with. These are some of the traditional joinery. You have a wedge joint, mortise and tenon, a dovetail, and a joint with a spline. So they're used for the different furniture pieces. And these are the tools. So now they've introduced machines. Earlier, they were working only with the chisels, and it was completely done by hand. Temple doors. So today, they're mostly working on temples and components of temples. Their work is unfortunately largely marginalized. There's an influx of a lot of furniture for residences coming from other places that are they're made of plywood and things like that, and flooding the market and at competitive prices. So they're mostly working with temples now. And you can see the drawings that they work with and the level of skill that they put. So these are floral motifs that go into the door panels, and they also have sculptures that go into the panels. This is the units of measurement, which is the basic unit is the angula, which is the measurement of the finger, which is an important part of designing furniture. So you've got the angula, and then you have the larger measurement, which is from the shoulder to the tip of the finger. And so it's very interesting to know that the angula, one angula is equal to 8 barley grains. So being an agricultural society largely, this is how the units of measurement evolved. So you've got a little bit more information on embellishments. There are swans and floral motifs that are used. The picture here is an unjal or a swing, which is a miniature swing that was made for a puja altar. And these are the rathas that were also made by the traditional touchers for the temples. So largely now they're working on cultural pieces. This is the last slide. So basically, to compare traditional carpentry to what we have more and more in the markets today, traditional carpentry is very labor intensive, so it takes a longer time to produce. And there are natural woods that are used for their strength and more durability and to be passed down different generations. Their training is longer, which lasts 4 to 5 years minimum and more than 10 years in traditional systems. They're custom made. They unfortunately do not have sufficient patronage right now. Modern furniture today are much quicker, shorter time of production. There's no training necessary. The processed materials and adhesives, which are found to be a little harmful for health, and they're not as durable. In fact, they last for less than maybe 10 years, and the costs vary widely. It's hard to find authentic prices. So with this, I close my slide, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present here.
Thank you, Chandana. Thank you for that. Hi, everyone. So our last panel for today, where we talk of institutions, studios, and design formation. Our first speaker is Cesar Pena, where he talks from the workshop to the design studio, the emergence of modern design in Bogota. Cesar, I can see your screen.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for you. This paper examines how modern furniture design emerged in Bogota during the mid-20th century through the reorganization of existing craft networks into coordinated systems of design practice. At its center is Anatoly Kaskov, a Russian-French designer trained at the École Nationale Supérieure des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, whose arrival in Colombia in 1946 offers a particularly revealing case through which to examine how artisanal labor, design literacy, and professional coordination converged in the formation of one of Colombia's earliest modern design studios. Rather than understanding modern furniture design in Colombia primarily through industrialization, stylistic innovation, or the simple transfer of European models, This presentation argues that its emergence can be understood more clearly as a process of coordination. Kaskov's importance lies in his capacity to rethink or re-coordinate or reconfigure Bogota's already existing craft ecologies, its cabinet makers, upholsterers, saddlers, bronze workers, and specialized workshops, into more complex systems of conceptual planning, drawing, project management, and distributed production. In this framework, modernity emerged through design's ability to systematize labor, knowledge, and production. When Kaskov arrived in Bogota in 1946, the city was beginning to modernize, yet its furniture and interior production remained largely grounded in artisanal systems. Rather than in depending on large-scale industrial manufacture, Bogota's furniture economy operated through workshops and specialized trades sustained by skilled manual labor and long-standing craft traditions. This was a city with important artisanal sophistication, but one in which design, fabrication, and ornament were still often organized through fragmented workshop structures rather than through modern studio systems. Understanding this context is essential because Kaskov's significance depended precisely on the productive capacities Bogota already possessed. Bogota already contained a rich ecosystem of making cabinet makers, upholsterers, saddlers, bronze workers, and decorative specialists formed the operational basis of furniture production across domestic, commercial, and institutional life. Kaskov did not create this landscape, he entered it, understood it, and reorganized it. His contribution lay in recognizing the city's dispersed but highly skilled artisanal infrastructures and articulating them into broader systems of coordinated production. This distinction is crucial. Craft remained foundational, while design increasingly became the organizational intelligence or structure that organizes it or that makes sense out of it. Kaskov's arrival was made possible through Boris Sokolov, another Russian émigré, entrepreneur established in Bogota and owner of SISYM, a furniture company that represented an important sign of industrial aspiration in Colombia. SIM, Sokolov and Moreno, his wife's last name, occupied an intermediate space between artisanal workshop and industrial factory. Its plan incorporated elements of modern production, yet it remained shaped by available materials, client demands, and the ongoing centrality of skilled manual labor. Seeking to strengthen his firm's decorative and design capacities, Sokolov contacted Maison Leleu in Paris, creating the transnational bridge through which Kaskov arrived in Bogota. This moment was significant because it connected European design education to Bogota's predominantly artisanal economy, creating the conditions for a new model of design coordination to emerge. Kaskov did not arrive in Bogota simply as a decorator seeking commissions abroad. He arrived with a highly specialized formation shaped by the École Nationale Supérieure des Arts Décoratifs and by his professional experience within the orbit of Maison Leleu, one of the most prestigious French decorative firms of the early 20th century. This background mattered because it positioned him within a model of decorative practice where furniture, interiors, architecture, and aesthetic coordination operated as integrated systems. What Kaskov brought to Bogota was therefore more than style. He introduced forms of design governance grounded in conceptual planning, technical drawing, spatial integration, and the capacity to coordinate multiple trades around unified decorative and functional projects. In this sense, the transnational transfer from Paris to Bogota wasn't merely aesthetic, it was methodological, I argue. Once established in Bogota, Kaskov developed a model that operated differently from both the traditional artisanal workshop and the factory floor. His atelier functioned as a coordinating studio in which conceptual design, client negotiation, technical drawing, and project planning became distinct yet interconnected layers of production. Rather than fabricating every object directly, Kaskov organized commissions through distributed systems of specialized labor. Drawings became instructions, design became coordination, production became network. This shift was fundamental because it separated design intelligence from fabrication while preserving the centrality of artisanal skill and intelligence. The studio thus operated as an intermediary structure capable of translating elite taste, architectural context, and client demands into coordinated production chains. The scale and diversity of Kaskov's clientele reveal the extent to which his atelier operated across multiple sectors of Bogota's modernizing society. His commissions included private residences, elite domestic interiors, commercial spaces, institutional projects, and diplomatic environments. This range demonstrates that the Kaskov's practice wasn't limited to furniture objects alone. He provided coordinated design services across broader spatial, social, and symbolic frameworks. Each contract required negotiation between client aspiration, available materials, local artisanal capacity, and stylistic mediation. Through this spanning portfolio, the atelier became a platform through which design increasingly functioned as organized service. Kaskov's practice depended on Bogota's existing ecosystem of specialized artisans, cabinet makers, upholsterers, and all of the master artisans played essential roles. His innovation lay in his capacity to coordinate these traits into integrated systems. Rather than displacing artisanal knowledge, Kaskov tried to reorganize it. This reorganization strengthened certain craft sectors by expanding demand, introducing new standards of design literacy, and connecting skilled labor to broader professional frameworks. Modern design emerged here through the orchestration of distributed expertise. This point is crucial because it reveals how modernity could develop through craft ecology itself. Kaskov's success also depends on his ability to understand Bogota's cultural landscape of taste. He entered a society where elite aspiration often remained tied to historicist styles, decorative eclecticism, and inherited European references. Rather than imposing a singular modernist break, Kaskov worked through negotiation. He adapted to local desires. While gradually introducing Art Deco, modern decorative refinement, and new spatial sensibilities. This ability to mediate between aspiration and innovation was central to his effectiveness. Kaskov's work demonstrates that modernity often advanced through translation rather than replacement. Through interiors, furnishings, and decorative systems, he helped reshape taste while remaining legible to his clientele. Kaskov's studio also functioned as a pedagogical environment through drawing, notation, inventories, and workshop coordination. Apprentices and collaborators acquired forms of professional literacy that extended beyond manual skill. One of the clearest examples is Luis Hernando Rodriguez, a Colombian designer who entered Kaskov's atelier as a young draftsman and learned to translate design concepts into technical systems of production. In Kaskov's studio, drawing became a language connecting aesthetic intention, artisanal execution, and managerial oversight. This process helped establish a modern design culture in Colombia grounded in knowledge transmission. It resonated with earlier national aspirations, such as Manuel and Cesar's visions for the School of Arts and Crafts in 1867, while adapting those ideals to mid-century professional practice. Rodriguez's later career as designer, entrepreneur, and collaborator with major Colombian firms demonstrates how Kaskov's studio became a site of formative institutional impact. Rodriguez's trajectory reveals how Kaskov's influence extended far beyond a single atelier. After his formative years in the studio, Rodriguez founded furniture-related enterprises and contributed to some of Colombia's most significant industrial and design initiatives during the second half of the 20th century. His career demonstrates that Kaskov's contribution wasn't limited to producing elite interiors. It included also cultivating a generation capable of expanding design into broader industrial frameworks. Through figures like Rodriguez, Kaskov's methods migrated into larger systems of manufacturing, technical specialization, and national design modernization. At the center of Kaskov's operations stood documentation. His notebooks, plan registries, production ledgers, inventories, contracts, and business cards reveal a studio structured through information management. These materials document a design infrastructure where every object circulated through systems of numbering, client registration, contractor assignment, and workshop delivery. The archive demonstrates that Kaskov's modernity operated administratively as much as aesthetically. His studio transformed design into an organized ecology of information, allowing dispersed artisanal production to function through centralized planning. This documentary apparatus is crucial because it allows us to understand Kaskov not simply as decorator, but as architect of a professional system.
Yeah, 2 minutes, Cesar.
Yes. Kaskov's success also depends on his ability to interpret Colombian elite aspirations. He understood that Bogotá's clientele often valued historicist prestige, French preferences, and decorative continuity. Rather than imposing a singular modernist rupture, Kaskov negotiated between established tastes and newer visual languages, such as Art Deco, streamlined classicism, and modern decorative integration. Interiors mediated between aspiration and innovation, and cultural flexibility allowed him to introduce modern design, gradually embedding it with familiar codes of status and refinement. His work demonstrates that design modernization frequently advances through translation and negotiation rather than replacement. Kaskov's trajectory connected the geopolitical displacements of post-revolutionary Russia, the luxury traditions of French decorative modernity, and Bogotá's predominantly artisanal furniture economy. Modern design in Colombia emerged through this layered encounter between migration, craft labor, and elite aspiration. Kaskov's studio transformed dispersed artisanal production into a coordinated design system grounded in drawing, documentation, and workshop management. This shift helped institutionalize modern design practice in Colombia while also aligning design with elite domesticity, social distinction, and restricted access to modern lifestyles. His archive, therefore, opens broader critical questions about the relationship between design and political modernization, class structures, labor organization, artisanal education, and material extraction. It reveals how modern design expanded through systems that often reinforce existing hierarchies of power and access. In this sense, the archive becomes more than a record of design history. It becomes a field for investigating the political, social, and labor social, labor, and ecological infrastructures through which modernity itself was designed. Thank you.
Thank you, Caesar. Our next speaker is Ishan Khosla, whose talk is entitled The Informal Chair.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Rukmini, for having me here and Design History Society. Am I audible? And I'm just going to share my presentation.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see the presentation?
Not just yet.
Oh, really?
But sir, yeah, now we can.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So today I'm going to be talking about the informal chair and the psychology of seating. So this is an examination of frugal creation and what it tells us about use, reuse, spontaneity, and the relationship of people and furniture in South Asia. The presentation per se doesn't address the craft of furniture making, but instead it will discuss what a chair is and how it can be used by the sitter. The presentation also examines the porous boundaries between the user and the maker, between the artisan and the designer. And it addresses the idea of spontaneous and improvised design, also called jugaad, which is a common phenomena in the informal economy based on resourcefulness, spurred on by economic hardship. This presentation foregrounds a pedagogical experiment that I conducted with design students at CEP University, Ahmedabad, as part of the summer-winter program in December 2019. Before I get into that, I want to just give you an overview about the work that I've been doing before that course. And so I've been involved with the informal economy for about 15 years now. And in 2016, I got the opportunity to work at a residency at Studio X Mumbai, which is a space created by Columbia University. And basically, I was exploring the idea of temporary making, and scaffolding seemed like an interesting entry point and a way to understand reuse, scarcity, and innovation. One of the aspects that I was explored during the residency was the idea of speed making, right? So this the idea of which kind of results with this economic pressures that the people face in the informal economy in urban India. So this is where making or constructing something becomes more valuable than even thinking about the design or construction beforehand. So this is something I call make first, think later approach. And so there's spontaneity in the design process, and the resulting formal qualities of the object are being formed while it's being made. And in the end, I created this object called with these scaffolding people called Work in Progress for a Better Tomorrow, which is a semi-functional object that is never really complete, since parts of the object can be re-scavenged to make something new or even more, or even be used as scaffolding. And in a way, this is a metaphor of India itself, where work is always happening, but somehow it's never really complete. Moving on to chairs, during the residency, I noticed just in my walks how people were sitting on individualized chairs, which were haphazardly constructed, scavenged from available materials. And it has since developed into a broader inquiry into furniture practices within the informal economy, and seeks to foreground furniture as a site where questions of authorship, labor, material culture, identity, modernity, and even global circulation are negotiated and contested. Repair is a central aspect of these chairs, which have been adjusted or to suit their individual use. For instance, bricks are placed below the seat, as you can see on the left, and on the right, pieces of wood are hammered onto the legs to make the chair taller for a barber. And these are certain aspects that I will discuss in the course at CEPT University. I started actually collecting these chairs, and then they became part of exhibitions, which also address this idea that the chairs used by vendors are rarely static or finished. They're objects. Instead, they evolve through cycles of breakage, repair, modification, and the idea of functionality and form are both in flux. So against this backdrop, the course asked students who are typically trained in design education systems that privilege corporate production, authorship, and mass consumption to look at the informal urban settings and notice how people use and construct their own seating and how this could inform their understanding of furniture. The idea being to shift the attention to the street. And rather than designing new furniture, students work directly with vendors and their existing chairs and stools. In assignment 1, I asked students to collect various types of materials. And by the way, the students were not aware of that chairs or stools will be made. This course was just very open-ended. It had an open-ended title. So there were some surprise elements, and I wanted to kind of mimic the pressures that people on the street face. So students were first asked to collect various materials from Ahmedabad without spending any money. So materials had to be sourced from kabadi bazaars or junk markets, informal markets, or street vendors. They could not be stolen or taken by force. And they were not told what these materials would become later. They were actually also had to map out these materials and create typologies to kind of examine the material culture of the city as in terms of the types of materials being used and wasted or discarded rather, and also which areas seem to be predominantly focused on certain materials. And in the part 2 of the same assignment, they had to actually now construct a functional seat. It could be a chair or a stool that could take my weight, for instance, for about 5 minutes at least. And they had to really pay attention to the material culture of the objects collected and what it says about waste in today's context, and yet convert it into a functional seating object. So the idea was really to mimic the material, economic, and time constraints of street vendors and dwellers who make and mend such chairs on a daily basis. So because of paucity of time, I won't get into the whole process, but they just had half a day or less to actually make these objects. And I also asked students to name their chairs because it also gets them to think about the materiality and how it's transformed. And so these students, for instance, found parts which belong to a refrigerator, some of them, and hence the name. And other students came up with other sort of solutions. Again, I will not be able to go into details. I'm just giving you an overview. This second assignment was a longer assignment. So this is a 2-week course, and the first assignment was just 1 day, and this was kind of the rest of the course. And here they had to document various types of street furniture or even seating objects, because sometimes they're on the border of something which is functional or non-functional, or not even a chair, in fact. And so used by people in the informal settings. And also they had a question when something stops becoming a chair or even a piece of furniture. So they had to capture the diversity of styles, the material culture, and the way the stool, chair, or object was constructed, and also the various ways in which it is being used by people on the streets of Ahmedabad, in various settings. And so diversity of styles and materials were important, and also the behavior of the person, how they're responding to the materials they're sitting on, because as you can see, most of these are not even chairs, they're prefabricated objects which have just been placed and used as chairs. But also what was interesting is that how does the seat actually change user behavior in terms of the posture and their interaction with the people passing by. So everything was found, bartered, nothing really was purchased is what they noticed. And basically the material constraints were basically based on what is available to the vendors and what is mendable or attachable as appendages to existing stools or chairs that they were sitting on, just to make it more comfortable or durable. So in the part 2 of the assignment, they had to actually hone in on one of the people and kind of work with them to repair, reinforce, or adapt them in ways that responded to patterns of use. So for instance, some of the students, again, I won't be able to get into all the projects in detail, but one of them worked with a tailor, and they noticed that his space was very disorganized, and he was always looking for his scissors or spools of thread. And they came up with an interesting idea. And so again, by the way, the students were not allowed to completely create a new chair. They had to reuse an existing chair that was currently in use, borrow it from that person with permission, and give it back by the end of the class, which is what they did. And so here they came up with this really interesting idea, and you can see the different colors of wood showcased, which is the original and which is the new part. But they came up with the idea to create a drawer to help store the scissors on one side, and on the other side you had the thread, the spools of thread. And this was kind of the result, a little more organized, and even they increased the height of the chair to make it more ergonomic. So these are names come up that the students came up with. In this case, this is a grocer who had two young daughters. So he basically worked from home, like his home was right there. And he had two young daughters, but they had no space to study. And so one is that they refurbished it into something more comfortable for children. And they added this very interesting idea of a backrest that becomes a table, so that the children can study at night or when he's not around or using it. And some more very simple interventions, like just making a stool become a ladder so that this person can reach the upper parts of his stall. And some were interesting in how they changed behavior, like this tapri or tea stall, where customers would come just for a quick tea and disappear. But students came up with this idea of creating a sort of a cafe by actually adding, appendages to the existing chair, where you could have a table or while sitting or even while standing, so you can have your tea and have a place to rest that tea. This is some of the examples of that. I think because I'm short on time, I will move quickly. This is a grocer. His main complaint was that his chair would get stolen, parts of his chair, especially like the top cushion. So the bottom was very cheap, but the top one would get stolen. And the second aspect that you can see here on the left is that the chair was quite low compared to the fact that he had to keep reaching up and grabbing things to give to customers. So they increased the height of the chair using bamboo. I thought this was quite an innovative way. So they kept the original sanctity of the chair or the stool, and then they also added this cushion element, which could be dismantled, and he could take on his cycle when he would go at the end of the day. In conclusion, some of the questions my research raises are, is design and spontaneity an oxymoron? Instead of planning and sketching, can design begin from scavenging and making the form based on available materials? Is design history only concerned with the work by trained designers? And if not, what are the boundaries of design and non-design, as well as furniture? The questions I asked students are, at that time, IKEA was coming into India, and I asked them that what is the meaning of Jugaad furniture in the world of IKEA? Also, what does it mean for trades to be informal versus formalized, right? So once people start buying, from IKEA and other such stores, what does that mean for the informal economy? And then what are the key differences between like the Duchamp's ready-mades and these objects which are on the boundary in some cases of being a sculpture because they're probably not as functional, and being a ready-made or being an object that's been found on the street. And in the final analysis, I argue that these informal encounters, foreground repair, improvisation, and incremental modification as legitimate forms of design practice, which are often ignored by pedagogy. By examining these practices, my study challenges dominant narratives of design authorship, durability, and suggests that the informal economy offers alternative frameworks to understand design as an open-ended, and collaborative, materially responsive process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ishan.
Okay,
So the next speakers are Jay Neiman, Tanay Kandarpal, Niels Neiman, and their talk is called Karkhane, Collaborative Furniture Design and Craft Knowledge in Mumbai.
Thank you so much. Yeah, today I will be the only one to present for so it will be easier also maybe for you to understand and to be a quick and short. Just 1 minute the time I share my screen.
Well, let me know so I can tell you if I can see it or not.
Yeah, for sure. Alors, share screen. One. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. I think this is good now. Okay, good. First, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to listen to all the presentation because I'm a bit traveling far from my place now. But I look forward to look at the recordings also. And today I'm very pleased to present you the research and creation project, which is called Karkhane, and which was financed by the Creative Industries Fund in Netherlands for the 2025-2026 period. This fund is the Dutch National Cultural Fund for Design, Architecture and Digital Culture, and they finance interdisciplinary and innovative design projects of makers and cultural institutions in the creative industry. And I'm Jade Nijman, a doctor in visual cultures from EHESS in Paris. And I have a background from cognitive sciences, history of art at the Sorbonne University and EHESS in Paris. And so my two colleagues, Tanay Kandarpal and Niels Nijman, we are two designers, couldn't be there today. So at the end of the presentation, I will share a quick link, which is redirecting to the official web page for the presentation project. And the project Karkhane examines contemporary furniture production in Mumbai through collaboration between Dutch, French, and Indian designers and local artisans. So it explores how craft knowledge is negotiated within transnational design context. And by situating furniture within ongoing negotiation between craft tradition, global design economy, and collaborative practice, we aim to contribute to broader discussions on craft and techniques, practical and situated knowledge, and to the decolonization of contemporary design narrative. Thus, through this project, we ask how we might rethink design not as an individual authorship model also, but as a collaborative and situated practice. And so today I will structure this short presentation around 3 moments, which are the initial goal of the project, the main inquiries that emerge through fieldwork, because there was a step of fieldwork during the basis of the project, and the next steps and future direction of the current project. And so the initial goal of the project were the following, because Karkhane builds upon a previous project which was called Karigari, which focused on the Indian stainless steel tableware industry. And that earlier research examined the relationship between artisanal metalworking traditions in Mumbai and globalized manufacturing system, analyzing how traditional craftsmanship can be preserved in an increasingly industrialized world. And in this previous project, we were researching karkhanas, a mode of production that has been shaped by managing legal and financial risks to producers. And this name is derived from the Hindustani language meaning factory. And historically, karkhanas were small workshops that produced various works of art and crafts, as well as items for the court and army of the Delhi Sultanate, and later for those of the Mughal Empire. and the karkanas were often named and categorized according to the type of works they were specialized in. And by taking the example of tableware production, important question arose about the impact of high-quality industrial reproduction on form, function, and utility, while also considering the narratives embedded in materials and techniques. And the project highlighted the significance of cultural heritage and artisanal knowledge, recognizing the social and economical value of skills passed down through generations. And this research finally led to the conception of a book documenting the historical, economic, and cultural context of these workshops, trying to enlighten the continued existence of this working model nowadays. And building on this previous foundation, so Karkane expands the research toward a broader approach on furniture design in collaboration with case goods and local artisans. Just to present quickly case goods. So at first, there was Case Design, a Mumbai-based architecture and design studio working globally across buildings, interiors, and objects. And its sister company, Case Goods, is conceived as a material-led extension of the studio's architectural practice, producing furniture and objects through direct collaboration with craftspeople and manufacturers. And so in this project, why do we focus on furniture? Because furniture sits at the crossroad of design, domestic life, economical concern, and cultural identity. And it often requires close collaboration between multiple ends and form of practical expertise. And at the same time, during this project, we wanted to question the role of designer in this context, because too often design history celebrate names, signature, and final forms, while rendering invisible the workers, technicians, and craftspeople who materially realize those ideas. And the documentary Mr. Invisible, Mumbai Out of Frame, which was directed by the Dr. Rukmini Chaturvedi, which was one of the contributors to our previous book, Karigari, focuses on workers whose labor sustains Mumbai practice and cultural economies while remaining socially unseen. So this is an image, like an extract of the documentary, is the image that you can see in the top right corner. And it reminds us that invisibility is not accidental, it is structured also. And Karkane, so the present project, begin precisely from that recognition. We really wanted to make visible the hidden form of knowledge, the practical intelligence, and the collaboration at stake being contemporary design production. And so now for the inquiries. As the project developed, several key questions emerged. So one major paradox concerns the relationship between traditional craft and industrial global scale production. And today, many workshops are asked to operate within globalized economies that demand speed, scalability, cost efficiency, standardization. And to answer that demand, craftsmen are adopting methods based on adaptativity, using their skills to respond to higher demand and a variety of orders. And following this idea, the karkana as a mode of production can be critically understood as rooted in pragmatism, a strategy shaped by the necessity to minimize financial risk and evade regulatory constraints, and operating with small workforces and limited capital investment. Karkanas reduce overhead and maintain flexibility, allowing them to meet niche demand while avoiding the legal and financial burdens imposed by law, such as the Indian Factory Act, which applies to units employing more than 20 workers, basically. And so we also question the kind of knowledge embodied during making operation. So the image that you can see are a bit like an illustration of those embodied knowledge also. And because when an artisan adjusts a joint by intuition, anticipates the behavior of cane, senses the weight of stone, or modifies the metal finish in real time, this is not only manual execution. So how does embodied knowledge reach a level where artisan can solve entirely new problems? And because in today's competitive environment, resilience becomes essential for those workshops. And vendors, as I said, must continually adapt to survive. And their relationship with customers thus become a site of learning and negotiation. So we were also interested in workshop as social and spatial environment, because indeed, as I said, a workshop is not only a production site, it is also a space of hierarchies, exchange, trust, rhythm, apprenticeship, and informal knowledge circulation. So basically, we were wondering on the interaction at takes in an artisanal workshop. And so about the way knowledge were transmitted, how non-verbal logic were introduced, and that many forms of expertise were non-verbal. And they were mostly carried through the hands, the eyes, the timing, the postures, the repetitions. And so the project further explore how those workshops can act as spaces for equitable knowledge exchange. And the project was also fostering and a critical approach on design hierarchy in non-European production context, because it was also connecting the Dutch design economy with Indian craft system, fostering this critical examination, as I said. And this raises important questions. So what happens when European design methods enter non-European production context? Do they reproduce all hierarchies between concept and execution, designer and maker, north and south, or can they become reciprocal? And so we were questioning how design approaches shift when engaging with different cultural, economic, and material realities, because by reflecting on collaborative design practice, Kakane challenges established hierarchies between design and craft, exploring more inclusive way also and reciprocal ways of working. And so the last idea that we were exploring and that we are still exploring in the project was and is the idea of a meta-karkana. So to understand how this concept and how a meta-karkana might emerge today and what is it, basically, we have to go back in time, because we previously saw that historically karkanas operated as organized systems of production. And so, as the historian Tirthankar Roy was pointing out, karkanas were establishing a solid link to royal or imperial patronage, operating within a clear hierarchy and responding to elite commissions. And framing this idea, we can say that karigas were already responding to a kind of orders, and it evolved nowadays to a B2B model. And so we were wondering, does the historical hierarchy of the karkanas also still exist today, or has it transformed entirely? What kinds of karkanas exist today? And key distinctions emerge when addressing modern karkanas. Is the producer directly engaging with the customer, or is the karkana one node within a larger supply chain? And once again, who is the designer? Is design limited to formal designer, or do vendors and artisans, through tacit knowledge and decision-making, function and operate as designer? Understanding the trajectory of this worker as designer challenges conventional authorship and expertise. And this suggests that karkana is not a single model and a single fixed model, but a range of operational typologies. And today we imagine it, and we imagine this idea of a meta-karkana as an expanded network that includes many actors. In that sense, the workshop becomes not only a place of production, but a place of shared thinking. And so the next goals of this project, because now the project enter its final phase, now we are exploring joint prototyping, material experimentation, and the documentation of workshop practices. And we develop a series of hybrid furniture objects that foreground mixed craft processes and a critical perspective on designer authorship. And so we are currently working with 3 workshops, specialized in cane, metal, and stone. And you can see like basically what kind of knowledges we are exploring there.
2 minutes, Jade.
Yeah, thank you. And those 3 workshops have been explored so far, and a specific focus is now put on collaborative production. And thus, those objects that we are currently producing are thought of as research outcomes that embody negotiations between skills, material, and knowledge. And we're also constructing a parallel digital archive that documents that situated knowledge embedded in those practices. And so, as you see, we have collected sketches, different type of photographies, interviews and recording, illustrating also designer and researcher thoughts on the topic, but also recordings made on site, focusing on the technical processes at stake during production phases. And the purpose is really to preserve those situated knowledge, often absent from official also design history. And we now aim at generating exhibition and discussion as the one that we are having right now. And we have opened a new space also, like a gallery and research space in Paris, dedicated to design and contemporary creation, that will host works in progress, finished piece, and the critical conversation around the project. So thank you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jade. Our last speakers for today are Rachel Lee and Sarita Sundar. Their presentation is Supply Uncertain, Craft Production and the Distributed Making of the Planter's Chair. Are you... Rachel, I did see you. Sarita, you are here.
You're muted, Sarita.
Ah, there you are, Rachel.
Oh, no, I think I'm having a problem.
So
Rachel,
now you're okay.
maybe Rachel, could you share? Hang on.
Let me
just keep.
I think Jade needs to stop sharing first.
Yeah, Jade, you need to
sorry,
stop
sorry.
sharing.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's why. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think I'm not. Sorry. Is it okay?
Yes, now you.
I should be able to, I think.
Yes, you should be.
Oh, it's saying I can't. You can't record the contents until it's quit.
Oh.
Okay. Okay.
Jade, it seems you're still sharing.
Yeah. Okay. What's happening?
Are you sure?
This. Yeah, it's saying I can't record the contents. I'm not sure why that is.
Because I don't see like I'm not having the screen, like the screen.
Yeah, I can now. You can't see your screen though. At least I can't.
Oh, you can't?
Yeah,
okay.
I can't. No, Jade's not sharing anymore.
Yeah, she's not. Yeah,
Zoom
okay,
is...
we can see yours now. Sarita, we can see yours.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Just give me a minute. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so thanks so much, DHS and Rukmini, for organizing this event. To give you a very quick introduction, I am Sarita Sundar. I'm based in Bangalore, and I have with me Dr. Rachel Lee, who's in Amsterdam. And over the period of about 3 years, Rachel and I have traveled across the Indian subcontinent and a little bit of Europe, chasing down an object with probable colonial origins, widely known as the planter's chair. And alongside digging through the archives of various institutions across the world, we have collected numerous oral histories from people who own, make, or sell the chair, and have photographed it in situ. So Supply Uncertain, a craft production and the distributed making of the planter's chair. In 1872, the Army and Navy Cooperative Society opened its doors in London, supplying British colonists abroad with the material goods of the empire. A branch followed in Bombay in 1890, with further stores opening across British India in Karachi, Calcutta, New Delhi, Shimla, and Ranchi. By 1933, the Bombay store's catalogue could boast that all furniture offered was made in our own workshops. Yet, If you scan the catalogs across more than 6 decades, from the 1870s to the 1930s, the planter's chair is conspicuously absent from all but 2 of them. In 1907 and 1908, tucked between a waterproof valise and a mosquito net and a washstand and an infant's bathtub respectively, the catalog lists an Indian chair, solid teak frame, cane seat and back, extending arms to use as a leg rest, priced at 64/9. Beneath the description, a parenthetical note, supply uncertain. After 1908, it vanishes. The Barlett chair, on the other hand, a patented portable approximation, persists through to 1939, but the Indian chair itself does not return. The parenthetical is the starting point for this paper. If the planter's chair was the quintessential object of colonial comfort, why would the Army and Navy store, the quintessential colonial emporium, not reliably stock it? The answer, we argue, lies in how the chair was made. Known across the subcontinent by a range of names, the Charukasera in Kerala, the Aram Kursi in Bengal, the planter's chair, was not a metropolitan export, but a local product, shaped by regional carpentry traditions and dispersed largely unrecorded labor. Its supply was uncertain because its making was distributed, rooted in place, resistant to standardization, and largely invisible to the colonial commercial infrastructure that sought to contain it. Over to you.
Thank you, Sarita. There is no precise understanding of the origins of the planter's chair. It may have evolved from a form of Chinese bamboo reclining chair or daybed, but references in colonial literature and visual culture confirm its close association with the British colonial military. The chair, therefore, most likely emerged in India during the period of the British East India Company's rule in the 19th century. Antique dealers and collectors have also suggested to us that some of the earliest examples were produced in Kolkata by Chinese craftsmen. From the 19th century onward, the planter's chair became freighted with the imagery of colonial power and leisure. Alexander Phillips' 1851 painting, The Early Repast, shows one in a hunting camp, its occupant at ease while attendants work around him. Surgeon A.G.E. Newland's photograph, The Long, Long Burmese Day, later used as the cover of an edition of George Orwell's Burmese Days, stages a similar tableau on a veranda. 2 colonial men reclined, a boy fanning them, books dropped, pipes in hand. Such images fix the chair as a symbol of colonial indolence, a posture of dominion-made furniture. Yet Orwell's novel, drawn from his own experience in Burma in the 1920s, already complicates this reading. When Florey visits his friend Dr. Veeraswamy, it is the Indian doctor who thrust him into a long chair, pulled out the leg rest so that he could lie down, and put cigarettes and beer within reach. The colonial visitor is installed in the chair by his host, not the other way around. The chair's absorption into Indian domestic life was not a post-colonial development. At Dakshinachitra, the open-air museum near Chennai, planter's chairs appear in a Syrian Christian house from Kottayam, dated to 1850, and a Muslim household from Aldur, Karnataka, built in 1914. Evidence of a parallel adoption across distinct communities during the colonial period itself. Today, the chair continues to circulate within Indian furniture culture. At auction houses in Chennai, in the workshops of restorers in Alipur, Kolkata, and at Modern Exchange, a Kolkata prop supplier, where one sits reupholstered in velvet waiting to play its next role on stage or screen. Found across urban and rural settings, from Gir to Chettinad and beyond, in India, the chair has long shed its colonial associations, if it ever truly bore them. The diversity of those who used the chair points directly to the diversity of those who made it. Sarita.
Now consider 2 chairs. The first, found in Sri Lanka, is made of a local wood called Nedun. It features crisply carved motifs of a makara, a water monster from Hindu mythology, with the body of a crocodile and the head of an antelope. spewing a braid of acanthus leaves from its jaws. Its long wavy arms and top rail match in ornamentation. A round detail swivels out as a drink rest. The second, most likely from Burma, has human figures carved into its four front legs, monumental in scale with large confident sections. Both cause you to stop and look. Both are evidence of craftspeople working at the limits of their skill, well beyond the requirements of a functional reclining chair. Early in our research, we set out to detail the chair's intangible features. We found that a classic version is distinguished by long arms that reach out to provide leg rests and a continuous sloping cane seat. As our research progressed, however, we expanded our definition to include the variations we discovered. These are not really exceptional objects in an otherwise anonymous tradition. Across regions where the planter's chair was made, differences in design are testament to the agency of the craftspeople involved and the influence of local craft traditions. Clues to a chair's origins can be found in its shape and proportions, the style of wood, the carving, the construction of its legs, the design of its weave, the presence of ornamental details at the extendable armrests, hinge. Hexagon and square weaves allow the most ventilation. Dense diamond weaves require superior skill and more material expense. The arms reveal the maker's hand most vividly, flat, dipping, curving, or rippling in profile, sometimes adorned with an ornamental pin or coin at the swivel point that can help date and locate its chair. These details were not incidental. They were the signature of a local tradition, as well as sometimes the wishes of the client. They were resistant to the standardization that the Army and Navy store and its patented approximations attempted but could never quite achieve.
The planter's chair is, among other things, a diagnostic object. Its materials, mechanisms, and structural details can be read as evidence of where and when it was made. The armrests are the most legible site of variation. Some swing inward, some swivel outward, some slide along a channel, a few fold flat using long wooden bolts and slots. The seat and back vary too. Most chairs have a continuous form, but many feature a sharp break between the two, or a separately framed seat and back. The angle of recline differs as well. Some chairs tip the sitter almost horizontal, others hold them at a more upright pitch. These are not merely stylistic choices. They reflect different assumptions about the body at rest in different climates and different rooms. Materials tell a similar story. Burma teak, dense and dark, suggests both northern origin and age. Chairs made from it are likely more than a century old. Rosewood points towards South India, Nedon towards Sri Lanka. The shift from Burma teak to Central Province teak in later chairs tracks the changing timber trade as much as changing taste. We have also found examples in mahogany and ebony wood. Size and proportion vary just as tellingly. In Kolkata, chairs tend to be generously dimensioned and deeply reclined, built perhaps for long hours on a wide veranda. Those from Goa are more petite and upright, closer in spirit to a European parlor chair that has loosened its collar. Tamil Nadu models fall somewhere between. These are not random variations, but regional signatures shaped by domestic space, social habit, and the body of the intended sitter. At one end of the typological spectrum sits the Australian squatter's chair that you see in the middle of this slide. Square, plain, and unapologetically functional. No ornamental pins, no coin details at the swivel, no carved legs. It is the chair stripped to its logic. A reclining frame, extendable arms, a body at rest. At the other end sits the Sri Lankan Nedon chair, which we saw earlier, with its makara carvings, or the Burmese chair with its figured legs. Between these poles lie an entire taxonomy of regional solutions to the same basic problem: how to hold the human body in a state of comfortable repose. And each of these is shaped by the materials, tools, and traditions available to the craftsperson who made it.
So while form, material construction, and ornamentation offer clues to a chair's geography, its many names offer clues to its shifting meanings. The many lives it has led, the many places it has traveled, and the diverse people it has seated. The chair's popular name links it to the verandas of British established plantations. Yet it swiftly crossed colonial borders. In the Dutch East Indies, it was known as the kursi gobang in Bahasa, or the lured stool in Dutch. I'm not sure I pronounced that right. But the kursi gobang is really a sort of a reference to the little coin that is often there on the swivel point of the chair. And it was embraced by local elites and communities across the industrial and political classes who attach vernacular names to it. The Charu Kasera or the Madian Kasera in Kerala, the Parsi chair or the Bombay fornicator in Bombay, the Hunsi Putua in Sri Lanka, the squatter's chair in Australia, the Burbis chair in Guyana, the Jori chair in East Africa. Our research has identified at least 20 distinct names across different parts of the world, and sometimes within the same region, attesting the chair's survival well beyond a colonial legacy and its continued varied use.
2 minutes
Today-
left, please.
Yeah. Today, while antique examples are sought by collectors and auction houses, the chair continues to be crafted by artisans and reinterpreted by contemporary designers. The Ayama Extend deck chair captures not just the shape, but the ambience of leisure it carries, using reclaimed wood with lathe turning techniques, referencing the joinery traditions of Gujarati carpenters and combining modern manufacturing with handmade finishes. Artists, too, are drawn to the form. The new planter's chair, installation by Mileno Guiron Obregon and Yassin Ben Abdallah, deconstructs a traditional chair and rebuilds it using industrial aluminium profiles alongside a woven cane seat. The spindle-shaped wooden legs that lurk behind the metal ones are deliberately jarring, at once structural and provocative, forcing an inquiry into the extractive practices of colonialism in today's supply chains. In a pro-seminar at TU Delft, Spaces Through Colonial Objects, which Sarita and I developed and did with the students, we invited students of the Berlage Generation 34 to examine the planter's chair and develop alternative scenarios, bringing chair, space, and sitter together. Their responses, the very clumsy chair, which makes a sitter feel vulnerable rather than powerful, and the chair for multiple people, which challenges the spatial hierarchies embedded in the seating, subvert the form's assumption from within.
The chair's enduring presence as both functional object and cultural imaginary lies in its capacity to absorb new meanings while remaining connected to its darker heritage. It has transformed in form, adopted new names, accumulated layers of significance. The Army and Navy stores in Kolkata and Mumbai closed in 1948 and 1952, respectively, in the years immediately following Indian independence. The company itself was eventually liquidated around 1981. The chair outlasted the emporium. A palimpsest of itself, it continues to accrue layers while allowing glimpses of a lost time to show through. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita and Rachel.